Good morning, Breakfast Club. Agent of Doubt here, and I'm still filling in for Nate, who's still doing Inktoberfest. And today I wanted to talk about an article that came out last Sunday in the New York Times about the Trump administration seeking to use the Department of Health and Human Services to redefine gender as being immutable and connected to your birth. And so your sex and your gender, and they kind of conflate the two, that like in a way that isn't the way it's understood by many. But your sex and your gender would be tied to whatever the doctor said your junk looked like at birth. And if you wanted to dispute that, you'd have to get a genetic test to prove that you were a different gender / sex, which, again, the terms are kind of conflated in the articles I've been reading. So my thoughts on this are it is 2 weeks until the election, the midterm elections, and I already have my ballot. It came in the mail. Here's my official ballot enclosed right there. And I just have this sinking feeling that this is, it's being framed by the articles that have come out about this, that this is actually being masterminded by the Trump administration to stir up all of their supporters who are bigots, who would come out to vote for them if they were to continue to do these decisions that would hurt LGBT community, hurt liberals, So it's being framed by that, by the articles, but my sinking feeling is that it's actually the timing of the articles is aimed at the liberal side of the country in order to get them to come out to vote. Bear with me here. So I really wanted to see the original memo, right? Because I want to know the context from which these passages that are in the New York Times article were lifted from. Okay? Call me crazy. I just like to dig just one layer further. So I'm looking in the article on the New York Times. There is no link to an image of the memo that they came into possession of. Right? So, in the article, there is a link to a image from a 2017 memo that was put out, and it's basically being used to frame this as being something that the Trump administration would do. And this is actually a memo from the Attorney General from 2017, not from the Department of Health and Human Services. At no point in the article does it name who wrote the memo. It does not name who was to receive the memo. It doesn't say how they got it, but of course, they can say that they're trying to protect their sources. But without seeing these things and just seeing the words circulated, I'm like, well, is this a draft that they're working on that was hacked and gotten out of some work group, or just leaked to somebody who had loose lips, and it's not even in its final form yet, right? I'm wondering. So in the New York Times article, it says it's been, quote-unquote, circulating since last spring, right? And I don't know at what point the New York Times got their hands on this memo before they decided to put out this article, but was it last spring that they got it? At what point since last spring before 2 weeks before the election is supposed to happen, did they get the memo? They don't say. And these things could also be used to trace back, the origin of their getting their copy of this memo, which could hurt someone's career. I understand that. But it's important for me because the way that I'm seeing it is circulating. Circulating is a word that's being used that in their article that is translating to other articles as something that's more leaning towards this is something that they've put out to other agencies in like its finalized form, right? The rough draft and circulating. See, rough draft isn't like being presented in other news sources the way that it should be. If this was an idea that they were just pitching around, well, who was pitching it around, at what level, was this Alex Azar, the department head of, the Department of Health and Human Services, or was this just an intern who had an idea and they're pitching it and they sent it back and forth somewhere, would this be a good draft for a memo for us to throw up the pipes? We don't know. But what I do know is a lot of news has been generated on the New York Times coming out with this. And when I read Rolling Stone, when I read Teen Vogue, when I read all of these other sources that have talked about this same thing, all of the quotes that they're using are lifted from the New York Times lifting from the original memo, which we do not get to see thus far. And when will we get to see the whole memo? My sinking feeling is after the midterm elections. Maybe they'll post a picture of the draft memo that they got, right? And we might have this reveal in which they'll be like, well, at least people were mobilized to the polls, It's... I don't know. I don't know that I'm the same, that I'm feeling the same thing that other people are feeling about this, but I do see that trans people are kind of the pawns in this, in that there are plenty of other ballot issues that should be considered versus the hypothetical maybe idea that has been circulating around DHHS. There are real things that have made it to the ballot level that you can decide on, and instead we're going to be thinking about, oh no, you must come out in numbers and vote for our side because the other side is evil and they're going to attack the smallest portion of us, and those people are defenseless and they're less than 1% of us and we have to defend them. It's it's riling us up for that instead of the actual issues that are actually on the table, and I think there's plenty to be decided by this election without, trying to light a fire under people's asses with hypotheticals. And I hope that the New York Times actually posts the memo that they're referring to, that they came into possession of, whatever draft that they have, and even if it's redacted as far as where they got it and who they got it from and what time, I'd like to see the rest of the context of what's in it, so that I can make a more informed decision about what is actually going on here, and not just see it filtered through the periodical that is known for having its bias, and the other periodicals known for having their bias. I want to see the nitty-gritty. I want to see the actual memo, the draft. Give it to me. So yeah, there's not much else I can say about this, especially in the profession that I'm in, as far as my own feelings on the matter. I think that my feelings are kind of determined by my profession at this point. If you are a counselor, you at least outwardly will always toe the line with the way that the issue is handled. But I do have some questions about sex and the definition of it, and with regards to the transgender community. I'm one of those people who, while I might be happy with the way that gender dysphoria has been treated in the DSM and all of those decisions, I will admit that I don't see totally the scientific rationale behind it as much as I see the political rationale. I think that it was politics that got that changed more than evidence-based science that could really sway me on these things. But I am happy that it helps me to serve my clients better, in that they're happier with the end products that they receive. It's all affirming. But really, I think, are we doing a disservice by allowing these definitions to be written by feelings rather than objective science? So, like, feelings can be a very subjective part of the science of behavioral study. And yeah, it's something where I feel like once we allow these feelings to dominate the scientific discourse, there are things that we will be ignoring, that maybe we could have helped in a different way. Yeah, I think that defining away transgender people just by changing some words on a piece of paper somewhere isn't going to negate their lived experience at all, but it's going to affect the way that they are treated by services from the government, from schools, from all sorts of places, from hospitals. And I really just want to see the original frickin' draft, because the way the things that were lifted from it are probably the most incensing things in the way that they're being presented right now. But what if there's some other context to them? Is there a context that would make these passages a little bit more stomachable by people on the left like me? I want to know. And what I'm seeing is that I'm having to see things through the filter of the news sources that are dominating the media, rather than actually being able to see what it is for myself. And all of the other periodicals that I've seen, like I said, Rolling Stone, Teen Vogue, Psychology Today, all of them have not seen the original memo. All of them have lifted their passages that they're looking at from the original New York Times articles liftings, and they're just requoting the New York Times. One news organization in America has started all of this fervor with this one little article, and it does remind me of other scares that have happened in the past few years, such as the apocalypse, for example, where they got blown out of proportion when one news source started it and all the other news sources started quoting them, and, and whatever was wrong with the original source, when these other sources didn't dig a little bit deeper, and they just parroted it, a lot of bad shit happened. A lot of people were affected by it. And so, yeah, I want to see the original draft memo. I want to see it. That's all I got for today. Hit like, hit subscribe, go back and watch everybody else's videos on the entire channel. If you haven't watched every Breakfast Club video, there are some great fucking rambles here. Great ones. All right? Laters.